So nice to see all of you again, board members. Our 15-minute lunch got a little extended, and it's just so great because we're going to eat dinner in 2 hours. So we are not going to lack for sustenance today. That is for sure. Let's see. I think we've got everyone here.
You sound like, oh, no, you don't.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to, just so everyone knows, move agenda item 9, or 9 on my list.
Yes,
What is
it's
it on
9.
this one? To the end of the day. So we're going to try to get through everything else first. That's a quick, we're hoping, quick housekeeping item. So let's go ahead and start with legislative session preparation. Deputy Superintendent Stallings.
That would be great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy with USBE. We have 2 items today, which you can see. The first one, Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones kind of alluded to when you were discussing the ESSER funds. It would be a request to seek a 1-year extension on the deadline for the USIMS project to be completed. So you can see there, we would be requesting a statutory change of the July 1, 2023 date to be moved to 2024.
Okay, thank you.
And then the second one, Jeff's going to explain.
Hello, everyone. Director Jeff Van Holten of Public Affairs. On the second one, this is the school-based mental health qualified personnel grant. So this is a $26 million a year grant that we give out to hire social workers, school psychologists, school nurses, and so on. What we are discovering, which may not come as a surprise, or some of you may be experiencing, is it is hard to hire these people, even with the money there, because they do not exist in the pipeline. So there is a chunk of that 26 million, around $1.5 to $2 million, that is carrying forward every year because it is not being spent because we cannot find the personnel to hire. So the proposal is to use the carry forward funds from that grant to create a mini grow your own just for this particular type of personnel. So the personnel that is funded by this grant, which is a school psychologist, social worker, school nurses, behavior analysts, and so on, all the mental health professionals, and kind of copycat the Grow Your Own program, but fund it with the carry forward that is not being spent. So that's what this proposal would be. It would require a legislative change to allow us to use those funds, as right now the statute only allows it to be for salary and benefits of the personnel when they are hired. So hopefully this will address some of the pipeline issue.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll be seeking a motion that the board directs staff to work with legislators on potential amendments to Utah Code as proposed. Okay. Okay, there is a motion on the floor that the board directs staff to work with legislators on potential amendments to Utah Code as proposed. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That passes unanimously. And let's move on to business cases. What are you going to do? I think Molly wants to do something. So we are turning the time over to Deputy Superintendent Jones and Fiscal Superior Director Dale Frost. I will get that title down.
Thank you, Matt.
Fiscal Policy Analyst.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. I did have a lot of opening remarks, but I think that in the interest of your time, we can segue right into Mr. Frost, Mr. Superior Frost, to go ahead and lay it all out for us too. So we made him rehearse this 4 times. So.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I had no idea that the title changed. That makes me a little nervous there. So I wanted to go over a couple things. Chair, there are some technical updates to business case. Member Lear has a business case for consideration for the board, and then we have the survey results to report out on. So I don't know what you'd like us to cover first.
Well, I have someone in queue already to make a motion, and that's Board Member Hart. Are you in queue also to make a motion?
No, I'm now Cindy Davis. Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead with your information, or are we ready to move into motions now?
I only have about 5 minutes of information to
Let's-
quickly go over, just to
Let's do that
orient the
first.
board, and then we can go from there. Okay, so in the business tracker, I highlighted here any of the business case amounts that changed from last month to this month. The vast majority of them was because we finished the Common Data Committee process. We incorporated the October 1 counts. We have projections on what, the WPU value would increase. So for example, here, the WPU value increased for a 5% above inflation. We had a placeholder of 175 million. We now know it's 186 million. These are just more information. So the same thing happened to at-risk WPU add-on. BTS Arts in all schools, we have an updated business case for you with some minor changes. The essence of the case has not changed. We just had a few changes to the calculations to make sure everything was lining up. And so that, I think, it's $150,000 less than what you saw before. But it's really just a minor change there, no substantive changes. And so you can see here, enrollment growth and the inflation amount change. So this is more just information for you all. No substantive changes on that. We just now have better data on those costs. So I don't know if there are questions on that front.
Oh, seeing none, please continue.
Okay, so let me go into just going very briefly over the survey results. You'll see that there are two versions, one from October or November 22nd, and then from some feedback, I changed and updated the tables just slightly. The data is the same, just so that's a little more straightforward and less confusing. So that's what I'm showing you. This is the November 29th version. Again, the numbers didn't change, nothing like that. So these are the priorities as they currently stand. Just wanted to orient us there. There are 10. There were 11, as you remember, but we took one off because the economies of scale work still needs another year. So here, this is kind of a summary table. So the current priorities as they stand here on the left, and this shows what the priorities would be if you adopted the ranked choice method. And I'll go through a little more. But for example, you can see that all 10 made the top 11. The one that wasn't ranked previously, because it wasn't even part of the discussion, was the small district charter school-based funding. Priorities 1 and 2 were 1 and 2 clearly from your rankings. But then the others kind of change moving up and down. So the critical USB EFTEs in the ranked choice method came in at 9. Again, I'm not saying this is what the priority would be. That would require, an action on the board, and so forth. I don't know if there are questions about this. Hopefully this was helpful as you kind of saw what moved up and down in those rankings. And then I was just going to quickly go, and I know this is incredibly, let me zoom in so we can kind of go over this. So on the page that has way too much information on it, these base amounts, these are happening in the base budget. They are automatic and statutory, so we don't need to worry about that. The rankings are here to the left. And when you can see that, for example, small district, charter school base funding, and USB market adjustments both have a rank of 7. That's because they had the same score. And you as a board would have to, that we did not choose which one is above the other if they had the same score. There's a running total of the total cost over here in this column here. So as you can see, here are your rankings by member. And if you remember the scoring that we talked about, a number 1 ranking would earn 10 points, a number 10 would earn 1 point, and everywhere in between. You can see that the WPU value increase, for example, it shows that scoring pretty clearly, was ranked number 1 for all but one member. And as you could see that 149 points were scored for that. And then it goes down the list, and you can see that there were 20 business cases that received at least 1 ranking. So I don't know if there are any questions about the methodology. I thought Member Hanson, who proposed the methodology, explained it pretty well last time, and hopefully we tried to follow that very closely.
Knowing that Board Member Hart and Board Member Lear are in queue for motions, we'll take questions. Board Member Moss. Okay, Board Member Earl.
My question, and maybe this is a process moving forward, there's so many business cases that actually didn't get prioritized. And not necessarily saying those are poor cases or anything, but I would think moving forward that it would be beneficial that before a business case came before the board itself, that there were certain like 3 board members, kind of like we have to bring something forward, have to actually support that business case, so that it actually has the support of board members before it, you know what I mean, before it becomes a serious business case, if that makes sense, or something we consider, instead of it just being put forward and then just being pushed on, that it actually has some kind of a investment from the board. So that's maybe a suggestion moving forward. I don't know if we'd need to do something formal for the process, but just as I'm thinking about this, you know, and how many didn't have any kind of rankings, you know, that may be a beneficial thing, so that we really are looking at our top priorities, even as board members, to get something through. Anyways, just some thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Before I move to Board Member Hart for a motion, are you finished?
And
Or do you
yeah,
have a
that
little more?
concludes the information I wanted to cover. Thank
Okay,
you, Chair.
super. Thank you. That was superior. Appreciate it. Hey, I had a quick question also. Since we voted for the special education teacher shortage pilot to be used in ESSER funds, should we assume that that's gone out of this and that moves the ones below it up 1 notch?
So may I,
Yeah.
did you want to answer?
At this time, Chair, can I do what they do in the movies and cover up my mic and advise my client
Yes.
on that?
It's like Law and Order.
Yeah.
It's great.
No, thank you
It's
for,
nothing like real life.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. It would require an action of the board, but since that is now covered with ESSER funds, there's no need for that business case to move forward. And so with an action to remove that as a business case, then it would do what you said, and the ones below it would move up, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
As a chair, I'm going to initially, just for housekeeping purposes, seek a motion to remove the special education teacher shortage pilot.
So move.
Thank you. Second? Janet Cannon is a second.
And Laura's hand is up.
Board Member Belknap, are you in queue for a motion, or do you have a question for our
No, I have a
experts?
question, but not about this motion, if you'll just come back after this.
So we're moving forward with our motions, so you'll need to let us know which one your question is about. So just break in when you need to, because it's hard to tell with your hand already up. Board Member Hart.
I move to accept items.
Oh, wait, did we vote on that? 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Those in favor, but we have a motion on the floor to remove special education teacher shortage. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. That was my fault.
But
Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was going to put
Now I
that
have a
in my.
question.
Oh, now you have a question.
Okay, Vice Chair Belknap.
I'll get there.
Sorry, I just wanted a question before a motion was on the table. I just actually wanted to make a comment. I'd like to not take too much time, but I'd like to thank, I never know whether to call him chair or, I'd just like to thank Scott for bringing this forward, the opportunity to rank these where we could take our time, we could read through these. And I also appreciate the fact that we've ranked them and we only have 9 in our top because then we can really work with the legislature on these top important ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Belknap. It's nice to see you larger than life on the big screen. Let's go with Board Member Hart.
Okay. I move to accept items 1 through 10, which means I actually did take the next item and add so that we have 10, so that's the motion, of our legislative priorities, and forward them on for consideration as they have been ranked. And I'd like to speak to that if it,
Second.
Okay, Brent Straight was the second on that.
I'm
Go ahead.
I'm happy to make this motion because I feel like this was a very transparent and just valuable process. It puts it all out there. It gives us something to work from. It clarifies our priorities. I just think that this is an excellent way of prioritizing. I think everybody had an equal voice, and kudos for making this work. Kudos to Chair Hansen for bringing this up. So there's my motion.
Great, thank you. Board Member Lear.
I wanted to make another, not a substitute motion, I guess,
Or an amendment, I
an
think.
amendment to the motion to say that I move that the board adds one more business case, which would be the business case that is listed on your agenda. That is, I don't know if it's numbered, that the board adopts the flexible educator-directed preparation and collaboration time business case and transmit it to the governor and legislature also for consideration. And
Second.
I'll
Oh,
speak to that later.
and I'll second that.
Brent Straight. Would you like to speak to your motion? Oh, you said you did want to. Go ahead.
Yes, I hope this doesn't seem as like a last-ditch effort, but I really profoundly recall being told, as we had our discussions last month, that board members could still bring business cases to the staff to develop and present. So I did that and along with Member Straight and brought this idea to you with the idea that we would give teachers what I have heard consistently from teachers that they want the most. And that is professional development that they choose, not where all teachers are sitting in an auditorium with a 20-year veteran sitting next to a brand new teacher and they're all hearing the same stuff and it's called professional development. But rather, individual teachers will be encouraged to collaborate with other professionals in their building and have the time to do that, and they will earn their appropriate level of pay. This is not just a small stipend, and that's one of the reasons that we decided to not go with a greater number of days, but start with a 2-day allotment that would be, and use one-time money over a period of 2 years, and then teachers would, all educational professionals who participated would be able to earn their appropriate range of pay. I also have to note that as Dr. Dixon talked about Dr. Laura Rogers' ideas today, I noted how many of her ideas were similar to what the ideas were in this particular proposal. That there would be authentic interaction among staff members, that the supervision should equal support so that there would be both supervision and support for teachers. And then the question would be, how are we improving instruction for students in doing this, which is an important element. So to make that motion with that information and explanation.
Thank you. Board Member Straight.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate Board Member Lear picking up the ball on this. Again, as we started hearing from stakeholders, at least I did, and that they were still interested in this idea. initially, when I looked at it, the price tag was so big, and my ideas were grandiose, beyond expectation. Maybe we'll get there. But one thing I really appreciate, this at least would give us a foothold in order to gather data to see the effectiveness of what we're trying to do. There's already plenty of evidence out there that this would be an effective thing to do, and so I'd like to see that keep moving forward. And I just want to make certain that we are flexible this coming legislative session, because from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a lot more focus on educators even becoming more transparent. And I am all for transparency. I'm for those goals of being accountable. I want to support teachers, though, with the time that they need in order to meet those. And I don't want to give the impression that these 2 days are to satisfy that. I believe that's a separate issue. And when those ideas start being put forward in bills, we need to be able to accept those, but protect our teachers and our educators in general.
Thank you. Board Member Earl?
Yeah, just a couple questions. I just, in my mind, I'm wondering if this is an LEA decision that we're making for them. And I'm just trying to understand just a little bit. So many LEAs are already choosing to extend the school year, right? I mean, I say school year, the contracts in order to meet the needs of their communities. I mean, I think that we know the same thing's taking place with smaller class sizes. It's a priority for that LEA, so they are choosing to spend their money that way. And I would think it would be the same with this. They would choose to spend the money this way. So I'm just trying to understand the balance in that versus the state coming in and saying, this is where you need to put your priorities. And the other question is I'm just curious, who are the stakeholders that are asking for this to take place? Do we have a?
We'll go ahead and have the maker of the motion respond. Answer.
Is that? did you
Yeah,
say
yeah,
yes?
I don't know. I know Brent mentioned it. I'm assuming it's the
Right,
same.
and the reason I was so antsy is because you made the point that I wanted to make initially that I should have stated, and that is that this is a matching opportunity.
Oh, okay.
The LEA and we will put in $30 million over 2 years, but it's completely optional for LEAs. And LEAs that want to match that money and take advantage of what the state is offering, they'll have that opportunity. It's also optional for the individual educators, which is why the amount is a little flexible or is a little bit moving because, well, and guess we'll appropriate that much, and then there could be more days if some LEAs don't take advantage of it, or but still want to match whatever money they get. So it's a one-to-one match,
Okay.
optional completely. And then your last point was, remind me.
I'm just curious on
Who we
stakeholders.
talked to.
Yeah.
Who I heard from were individual teachers, friends who are teachers, neighbors who are teachers, professional colleagues. It actually caught me off guard when Jennifer Bamey, who's the new UEA executive director, actually made the same pitch for many more days than we feel like we can afford. But I've heard from individual teachers. Brent can speak to who he's heard from.
Foremost, it was educators. As I've visited with other teachers, especially, they've indicated that, especially those who remember the days of quality teaching that used to exist in our schools, and productivity models that were tried and were very, very, very effective, but we went away from those for various reasons. Yeah, it was brought up today in public comment. It was brought up last month in public comment as well. But as I mentioned before, there is a desire on the part of the legislature to have greater transparency and to have greater requirements, especially in the realm of social studies teachers. And, I think this would set the platform for saying, okay, we absolutely agree with that. We want to support those ideas, and we want to support that agenda, but we need the money, we need the funding, we need the time in order to be effective at that.
And thank you, Kara, for the clarification on buy-in, because I think that's an important thing. Because then the district itself, or the, LEA has a component, and somehow I didn't catch that when I went.
Because I didn't say it. You reminded me. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry, could I interject again?
Go ahead.
And this isn't perfectly what I would do, but I support it 100%. For example, one of the concerns that has been brought to me is that with the matching element, this makes it a little more difficult for our smaller LEAs. And so perhaps that's something we could look at later, but let's get this in there. It's not going to be ranked as a priority. It's just being put in there. It gives us a placeholder on the topic, on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hanson?
And I think Board Member Straight answered part of my question. I was wondering where this would fit in with our rankings, because now we have 1 to 10. And with this substitute, we're just throwing this at the bottom, I guess. So kind of a de facto ranking of number 11. So it's above all the other ones that didn't get enough points to make the top 10. Am I understanding the proposal right?
Without thinking through that thoroughly, yes, that's what I had in mind.
Okay. I guess I just have some issues with that, in that this one is getting kind of special consideration. And wondering if maybe we could defeat the substitute or not adopt the substitute, adopt our ranking, and then rank these again or something. I don't know what the process is going to be going forward. Historically, we've ranked these, but by adopting this substitute today, we would be putting this in ahead of those others that may have been close, and I'm not looking at the points right now, that may have been close to it getting in the top 10 anyway.
Yes, and what you can do, if this passes, is you can make a motion to remove it and put something different in.
I understand, but then we're back to that process that I think all of us have thought wasn't such a good process. Yeah.
And we
So
can't keep re-ranking every month forever, because we're starting soon,
why,
but.
yeah, why couldn't we is the question.
Well, we could, but you don't have to not do this today to do that. You know what I mean? You could, I'm just saying, logistically, you can do this today or not, and you can still rank or not, and you can do an individual or not. You have all of those options to move to do,
Okay,
any of those
I guess I
things.
understand the chair's position. I'll be voting against the substitute, and then I'll raise another motion that we include this in the pool and re-rank after that, depending on how that motion goes.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hart.
I just would
Oh,
like.
sorry. Board Member Moss said he actually did have a question now, right? That's not a motion?
True, but I don't know what order I'm in. Am I
You're
up?
before.
Okay, it should be simple. Similar question, I was going to move to add small district and charter-based funding. Do I understand the original motion to make that number 7 because it's incorporating the top 10? And my motion is irrelevant.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hart.
I didn't hear this mentioned, but this model, as long as I'm understanding it correctly, is similar to what we do already for special education teachers. So this is something that we have done. This is a practice and a procedure, so to speak. Now, not the matching, but adding on the additional days and having it be optional. Special education teachers actually have 5 days, and they can use them before or after, or however your district LEA makes rules around that. But this is an amazing business case, and the only reason I didn't put it in there is because I wanted to start conversation. The other point, though, I would like to make is I do think we need to re-rank in between meetings, sorry. That, creates some work. But I think as we learn more and as situations change, I do not think that we should abandon our process. I think we should incorporate what we learn and re-rank them at least a few times so that we can see what that does to the data. So that's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. We have Superintendent Dixon and then Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the case because we're asked to speak to these things often outside of here. The narrative, Board Member Lear, you talked about days. When I look at the text, the narrative is about time. And knowing what we know about powerful professional learning, I just want to make sure that this would not box people into days because that does not align with what we know about powerful professional learning. I would hope it would allow for what the title and the narrative says, which is flexible time. So when we go out and look at varying models that are successful, they break time down very differently. So can I just get some clarity on that it's not necessarily about, the days would be the way it's funded, but the flexibility would be up to the local school or LEA as to how they break that down and use it appropriately for their teachers, correct? Like the narrative on the paper didn't quite match what you said, I
Because,
think.
and probably because I was a little less than exact and a little less than thorough, but and Dale and I who communicated with me, bless his heart, persistently to get this on paper. But we figured out the money based on days, but the idea was that the time would be could be an LEA determined variable. So that that the match would work if it's 5 hours or 5 days and I'm just using random numbers.
And Chair, may I add to that?
Please.
I wanted to show you quickly here, these calculations, we actually did these calculations for Member Straight when he was working on a similar idea on what would it cost to provide an extra day at their full daily rate for all teachers and all school educators. You can see here what we include in all school educators, and that's where the 15 million in the 2 days came from. And we are clear here that if fewer LEAs participate, or if the participation rates for educators vary, this would provide for additional time. It is, and we do say that we want for simplicity and flexibility. We don't specify whether it's days or hours, but the intent is that it's flexible at the local level on what the teachers need and what they can opt into. And so, again, the basic idea would be the matching of state funds to add teacher time. And it's contingent on both the LEA and the educators opting in to it. I don't know if that answers your question, Superintendent, but I think it would allow for what you were saying.
Would you consider it a friendly, just friendly language, everybody? Because I don't see the amount of money in the motion. Do we need to put that it's equal to 2 days pay?
The amount would be 30 million one time, and that's part of the business case. We could put that in the motion. It's not for the days, it's for $30 million one time
And
is the request.
Over a 2-year
Oh,
period.
yeah, and to be spent over 2
Over a
years.
2-year period.
Yep.
Right,
Is everyone okay if I add that into the motion?
yes, I'm okay.
Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for seeing me in such large and in charge position here today. I just wanted to say something about Board Member Earl's comment, that I really appreciate the idea of streamlining this, and if we keep items that the board members rank and not the others as we work with the legislature, I think it would make it a cleaner process for it. And then Board Member Hart made a comment about new information. yes, if new information comes up, we need to look at this, but at some point, we've got to start pushing our agenda, and I don't mean that as a negative, of what we feel like would be most valuable to our children moving forward, our educators, that we need to stay as steady as possible. But I agree with Board Member Hanson on this one, that ranking this one as an 11 is disconcerting, as we didn't have all that extra time to work on this. And I would, if Board Member Lear would like to look at this, if it would go back into the business case file and just come in as one of the business cases, then I would probably vote for it. If not, I'm probably not going to vote for it.
Well, that's catch-22. Can I respond?
Go ahead.
Was I supposed to?
Go ahead, you can.
I would like it considered somewhere, somehow. I know it came along later in the game, but I think we've heard now from several different corners of the education profession that this is what teachers need. And if teachers are telling us, educators are telling us this is what they need, then I think we should listen and not say, no, what you need is all-day kindergarten. Or no, and I know we're also looking for what's good for children, so there's a balancing approach there. But I do think it's important to hear what teachers who will provide these services to children feel like will strengthen their skill set. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Board Member Hart?
I just want to make a clarification. I read this, it says flexible educator-directed preparation and collaboration time. The time that special education teachers have is strictly their own. It's not a professional development. It's not it's time for them to work on student files, work on contacting parents, work on readying their materials, closing out the year. So I wouldn't support it if it was directed professional development. I wanted to be really clear on
It
that.
is exactly what it says.
Okay.
Board Member Straight?
Yes, thank you for that clarification. That's what it's always been intended to be. So just maybe a thought regarding the politics of the ranking. There's a business case that I didn't even rank myself, even though I'm highly interested in it, because I felt like for the general good of education that they ranked ahead. There's another reason as well. When it comes to the civics education business case that's in there, it already has strong support from multiple stakeholders and from the legislature itself, from the governor's office. It's like pushing a rock down a mountainside. You push that rock down the mountainside, if it has the momentum behind it, it's just going to keep rolling. And so that's why I wasn't so concerned about the ranking of that particular item. I think this may be somewhat the same thing because it's coming late to the game, but there's, as we've heard, there is interest. And yes, I would be ecstatic if it was a ranked business case, but I don't want to do it at the jeopardy of what the board has already stated. That's my view, because I think it's going to gain its own momentum. And we can communicate as, you know, we're going to have opportunities to communicate our support for all these different items. So I'm fairly flexible in how it works out. I just want it in there.
Okay.
Go ahead. Fiscal analyst.
Thank you, Chair.
Frost.
If I may add to what Member Straight said, and I'm just want to clarify one thing that maybe that could put you at ease, Member Lear. Whether this is ranked or not, as long as it makes it to the list, it will be considered by the legislature. And that kind of goes to Member Earl's point, where all of these, whether they're ranked or not, will be considered by the legislature. Clearly, the rankings from the board carry weight, but it just needs to be adopted and added to the list to be considered. Whether it's ranked or not, that's your, I just wanted to clarify that on process.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor that the board adopts the flexible educator directed preparation and collaboration time business case and transmits it to the governor and legislature for consideration of 30 million one-time funds to be spent over a 2-year period. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No,
Okay, that motion passes with Board Member Hanson and Board Member Belknap opposed. You can still move, Scott, if you want to do another ranking.
No, I was just trying to understand. I tried to catch you before the vote. And maybe if I can speak, the
Sure.
question was just,
Go ahead.
so based on what we just heard from Dale, this will just be added to the list and then that whole list goes on to the legislature?
Well, it'll be 11,
Or can-
number 11,
Well,
in
No,
a
it
ranked
doesn't
order.
say it does say it'll be priority
Yeah.
11. Yeah, okay.
And then the rest will still all go
Yeah.
to the legislature, unranked, unless you make a motion
I
to.
will make my motion. I
rank.
told you I would do it. And I guess I can here. I move that the board re-rank the business cases this week and use that new ranking to be transmitted to the legislature, including the new business case that was presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that the board members re-rank all of the business cases, including the new motion that was presented today.
And-
Do I have a second? Board Member Hart is a second.
I have a
Did
question.
you already speak?
I
Would-
can just speak to it briefly. As I said, I don't think that it's fair that this one jumps in last and gets an 11 ranking because there were other items that came in close, 11, 12 before, and now they've been bumped. And board members should have a chance, as we did the first time, to consider all these as a whole, see which ones we think are most important.
Okay, thank you. We can certainly look at numbers 11 and 12, and someone can make a motion if they want to do that instead of this one. Because those have already been ranked. Yeah, okay.
So let me, can I ask a clarifying?
Yes,
Is there anybody else? I just want to, that means we'll take in all of those that are at the bottom again and re-rank those? Or are you, that you're saying all 20-year plus items again? Is
Yes.
that your motion?
That is, and I would anticipate in response to that, that there wouldn't be much change in the rankings. We're just considering one new business case, and whether that affects our 1 to 10, then it would affect our 1 to 10. But I don't think that something that wasn't voted on before is all of a sudden going to become our number one. I don't see that this moving around so much is a big issue. I don't think that's going to happen. If we all thought through it the first time and had reasoning for that. All we're doing now is weighing this new business case against the ones that we've already ranked.
Board Member Moss. Sorry, Board Member Hymas actually first, and then Board Member Moss.
Well, I just, as we talk about introducing new business cases, I would love to see us, every time a new one is introduced, to re-rank. And I know that sounds tedious to some and maybe time-consuming, but if we're going to add business cases, then I don't understand why we wouldn't. Otherwise, let's not add business cases. Right? And so, I mean, I don't know if it's a proposed amendment to say each time we have new business cases accepted, then we need to relook at all business cases and re-rank. And then, I know another step, adopt those top rankings, but I don't know if that's possible.
Thank you, Board Member Moss.
Procedural question, I guess. If we're going to be doing another survey, as I understand the motion this week, does that then come back for discussion in January? In meantime, we are locking this in as 1 through 11, et cetera, as December's priorities? Or do you intend that the survey would automatically reorder the list? I would assume that would come back for board discussion, but clarification.
Can I respond? Chair?
Please.
I think that what you said the first time, that this would come back to us in the next meeting, that would mirror the process that we've used in the past, where we have just had this list open clear through the legislative session with rankings changing and board members saying this one should bump up and new information coming even from legislators when we're sitting over on the Hill and asking for us to move things around as priorities. So I just see this as an ordered way to proceed kind of the same way we have, updating our list as we gain new information and hear new business cases.
Board member, podium. Yes. Did you have fiscal analyst Frost?
I just had one clarifying question. You know, process-wise, it is not hard. We now have all the stuff in place to very quickly run the survey and then bring it back next meeting. My question is, what are the rankings? Because right now, these are the priorities as they stand, you know, that do not take into account the ranked choice. You'd have to, so that's my question is, are you changing the priorities this month, or are you wanting to just find new information and then act next month? That's what I'm not clear on.
Well, we have 11 priorities. I mean, we are constantly working on these issues. We've already spent tons of hours working with legislators and, you know, the governor's office. So, you know, we can keep re-ranking all of them and re-ranking, and we will probably lose our entire staff. So I'm just saying, every time if we have massive re-ranking, all those hours of work go down the tubes. So if we do it, and what you say is true, like I was so glad when I saw these rankings, I thought, oh good, everything's pretty much the same. All of that work is salvaged. But, you know.
I guess, let me clarify, is Board Member Hart's motion, I don't think that was adopted, or did I miss that?
There was a substitute motion.
That's a substitute motion. Oh, I apologize.
The
I'm trying to follow.
substitute motion
You're right.
passed.
It included your motion. Now I see it.
And then now we're voting on her original motion.
I apologize. Thank you. I'm getting caught
And
up.
if it doesn't pass, then we keep our one we've already done
Yes.
last time that included no rankings.
Number one of the
Point of
board
order,
would replace the rankings that were adopted last month.
Correct.
Okay.
If
so
it
the one-
passes, yeah.
And, that hasn't been acted on. Thank you.
Did we
voted,
vote on, we haven't voted on yours, we only voted on hers. We voted on the amendment, but not the original motion.
But a substitute motion doesn't go back to
She
the
changed it
original.
to an amendment,
Oh, she changed it to an amendment?
yeah.
I did say an amendment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cindy's correction.
Then how did we go to the next motion of Scott's?
Able to raise a motion,
It-
and I thought that was a substitute motion, and we were.
Yeah.
And then we raised it.
Yeah.
So can we not vote on this motion until we vote on her motion, and then we've got to go back to vote on his motion? No, he wants to have everyone go and re-rank everything. But could he make that after we vote on her motion? Okay, so let's vote on Molly's then first, Scott, and then you can remake that motion.
Did that one fail? Yours? Did yours-
Hers passed,
Yours
so now
passed.
we're on to yours. Okay, so we already voted on hers and it passed. So does board member, I still have board member Straight, Hart, and Earl. Do any of you have a comment to the original motion? If you have a comment on board member Hanson's, we'll come back to, he can make that motion again after we vote on this. Be good to move forward? We have a motion on the table that the board replaces the business case priorities approved during the board's November meeting with the ranked choice priorities 1 through 10 and forward these priorities to the governor's office and legislature for consideration. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. That passes with board member Hanson opposed.
What's Laura's?
Lauren, are you voting?
But I didn't vote because I thought we had an amended motion.
Was?
It would be highlighted
As
on the
amended.
screen.
I need to
Yeah,
say
but
that
you
again as
gotta
amended,
read
right?
it. Yeah, you didn't
I
read
need to
it.
say,
You read
okay.
the original.
We have a motion on the table that the board replaces the business case priorities approved during the board's November meeting with the ranked choice priorities 1 through 10 and forward these priorities to the governor's office and legislature for consideration as amended. No, I need to add it in.
In purple.
The board replaced the business case prior, we have a motion on the table that the board replace the business case priorities approved during the board's November meeting with the ranked choice voting priorities 1 through 10 include the flexible educator-directed preparation and collaboration time funding request for $30 million one time as priority number 11 to be spent over 2 years as a new business case, and forward all the business cases to the governor's office and legislature for consideration. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have Board Member Hanson opposed. Thank you. Now, do you have another motion now?
Yeah, so now I'll make my motion ordered. That will be, take the ranked priority list and re-rank it according to the ranked choice voting process that we've established to include the new business.
There's a motion on the floor that we, it isn't written yet. We need a second first. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'm waiting for you to, who's writing it up there? I want to make sure I say it accurately.
Yeah, the board,
Resubmit rankings through a ranked choice process.
with the new business case added to the list.
To include the new business case.
Do you still have more, or is that the end?
Chair, we're just looking at the language that was considered last month for Member Hanson's motion.
Okay.
Gist of this.
Couldn't it just be to include all of the business cases?
Yeah, yep, that would be fine.
Also, business.
Okay, is this complete now? Is this right, Board Member Hanson?
No, it's still not.
No, it's not up there yet.
In there, I think. Let's see. Which are we looking at now? Just the
Where
one?
she's typing at the bottom.
Got two cursors on there.
That look right or no? That's highlighted.
All of the.
All, put an all at the very, and yes, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a thumbs up. Do we have a second?
Second.
Board Member Straight is a second. Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
Think that I have spoken, everyone understands. I just, fundamental fairness, I think we have a process now that I think the consensus is it's working, and why we would jump and throw something into the middle of a ranking without giving it a chance to compete on its own merits, just doesn't make sense to me. I don't share the fears that Chair Davis or Vice Chair Davis has that this is going to change our list a lot. I think if this one jumps up into the top 10, the others will be reduced, but it'll be an incremental kind of a change.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Straight.
Yes, I actually very much appreciate this motion, and I think it's been shown that the re-ranking and the ranking we did since our last meeting was successful. We need the flexibility. We need to be able to be flexible and meet because this isn't the last thing that's going to come onto our plate between now and when the legislative session ends in March. So we need to be prepared, and I appreciate the openness that everyone's had towards this business case being added today, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Board Member Earl.
Yeah, I think, I don't think we need to overthink things either, because the reality is it's going to go to the legislature and it's going to be different. And despite our best efforts, and I do think we do put our priorities forward, so I'm not suggesting that, nor that there's anything wrong with this business case, but really our time, I think we put the best foot forward, but then, to overthink this would be a waste of our time, maybe, is what I'm saying, because I think a lot of legislators have their priorities and their committees have their priorities, and they may take precedence over what we're doing anyway, so.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Deputy Superintendent Stallings. I think I'm remembering, but is our meeting with the legislators where we present our rankings, is that January 22nd?
It actually goes to Scott. That's a question.
Is that a question for
Either one. The legislative breakfast, is that what you're talking
the
about?
legislative breakfast?
Yes. It's January 20th.
January 20th, okay. And have we set ours up yet with leadership and?
We usually try and schedule those in January before the session starts, generally. So like those first 2 weeks in January.
And our January meeting is not till the 15th?
14th or 15th.
Yeah.
Thank you, Superintendent.
13th.
Let me make sure. I know I've got you in the line, Superintendent Dixon, but I don't know.
It's just to expand on that point.
Okay, go ahead and expand on that point, and then I'll circle back to you if you've got additional points
No,
after
that
we
was
hear
it.
from the other two.
Thank you, Vice Chair Davis. In fact, the point I wanted to make was actually your question, and it was more of a comment in that. So your priorities have gone forward already as part of the budget process that as required in code. Then I think there's an understanding that there's always room for flexibility, but between now and the session, we have the meetings as you've just generated in the question. But I will say something that has changed over the last couple of years as the board has developed and refined their process. There is more of a reliance from legislative leadership and the legislature on your priorities. So I love that you're having these robust conversations and that a process has been developed. They have gained more confidence in the collaborative process that you engage in to put your cases forward. And if you look back last year and the year prior, the things that were funded were very aligned with your top 10. So there isn't a lot of wiggle room that is helpful past your January board meeting. And in fact, leaning in to the conversations, they'll want to know what your priorities are. Higher Ed comes out with a glossy brochure by now. JLC has it by now. And they watch the board every month make these changes. And it makes it very hard for staff to go up and say, and we use this tagline, we will say, here are the priorities, things may change based on things that come up. But they want a period after, here are our priorities. And so just know that moving forward, that yes, things arise that come to your attention. And we can engage in that narrative as you direct. But it does make it very challenging when they compare our list to other competing interests when they have a solid list and it's out there and published. It just makes it more challenging. And they do honor what you say and what you rank. We have found the last 2 years as we've been tracking, and I think Angie and Scott can validate this, that they are really trying to pay attention to what you request. Was it last year that we got all of the top 10? Year before? It was pretty close. Yeah, so it's more and more aligned as we've tracked it over time. I just wanted you to be aware of that as you think forward about the opportunities for flexibility that are certainly there, but the realities of what gets noticed is the foundational top 10 that we can be consistent on. I hope I didn't misspeak, but that's the reality that as staff, as we do your bidding on the Hill, along with your leadership, that we are faced with if we can't land on something.
Thank you. Board Member Hutchings.
Permission to ask a question of the
Please.
maker of the motion? And thank you, Superintendent Dixon, that helps me a lot with what I was trying to figure out. But I guess I'll still ask the question, is it, from some of the comments here, it sounds like board members might be in favor of doing this ranking frequently, maybe every board meeting for the next few months? Is that your intention, or is you really just see this as a ranking because of this change and then we're going to be done? Or is there the possibility that this new process means we're going to go through this through March and possibly cause some disturbance in our ability to get much done and have a reliable list for the legislature?
Thank you. Board Member Hanson?
Oh, thanks. I think that there should be a cutoff, but if we're going to allow new business cases to come on, then I think we should be re-ranking. So if a new business case comes in, then yes, we'd be re-ranking. If we want to cut off the new business cases coming in, then we could be very stable. We could be stable right now. I think fundamentally it's not fair for a new business case to jump in and get a rank that it hasn't had the vote of all the members. That's all I think.
Thank you. I don't see any other lights on. Please, Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just real quick too, so there is that legislative breakfast, but right in the first week of the legislative session is Public Education Appropriations Committee.
Yeah.
And it's
right.
that's right on us. So that's, so just if we could keep that in mind as far as, being prepared along the lines of what Superintendent articulated so well, so.
And I'll just add my comments to a lot of drafting as well. I mean, I'm going to vote no on this one, but the selfish side of me actually would vote yes, because I love this last business case. I think it's going to move up in the rankings when we re-rank. I see people nodding. So while I would really like to, I really worry about the process. I worry about the drafting that's already happening. I worry about all of this that we're doing. That's why I prefer a one at a time change rather than opening the whole door and having the chance that we could have 5 of these could leave and we could get 5 more, and then all that, drafting and meeting time has, but, we can still move forward with it. I guess I'll probably be happy either way but I do kind of worry that we're going to have huge changes. Do you want to speak again, Board Member Hanson? We have a motion on the table that the board direct staff to provide board members an opportunity to rank order all business cases via survey by a designated date. Direct staff to provide the final results of the survey as backup to Civic Clerk for the board's discussion of funding priorities in January, and discuss the results of the rank order process during the board's January meetings. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed? No. Those, if you raise your hand if you are in favor. We have board member Booth and Klein and Hart and Hymas and Straight and Earl and Hanson. Those opposed? Board members Moss and Norton and Hutchings and Cannon and Lear and Davis and Belknap. What are you, Laura?
She's a no, I think.
And Belknap is a no. I didn't count. Did you count?
Yes, it's 7 to 8.
On which side?
Oh. 7, I'm sorry, because we're missing somebody. So it fails. Fails.
I'm a no. Okay, that motion fails. But while we're still on the agenda item, if you have one that you want to put up instead of this one that was the next one in order, make the motion now. If you have a preference instead of this one, make the motion now. So nobody walks away feeling that they didn't have an opportunity to have their one they really love there. Assessment? Okay, let's move on.
Well, I mean, I know it's quick. I just would make a motion then that we replace all with at least this 11th one. Where's can I see the motion, the original motion up there? What's the one that just failed? Direct staff to provide board members an opportunity to rank order at least this one that we just voted as in number 11. Can we just do this one time, or was this a general? That's what I'm asking.
You
Can we
can
do
make
this
that
specific?
motion to, so is it different enough? What I'm understanding is you saying, can we rank order this one with the others that were left for the spot of like 11 or 12?
Right,
Is that
yes.
what you're asking?
Re-rank the top 11 adopted or whatever we just voted to do. Can we re-rank those top 10 or top 11?
Well, that's what just failed,
Well,
but you
'cause
mean
this
the
one says-
leftovers.
Because this one says all business cases
It was all 20.
that were yes, the top 11 that we just passed, and then
Re-rank those.
re-rank those.
Does that make sense?
Re-rank the top 11.
So you want to take the top 11 that have already passed and re-rank
And
those?
just re-rank those, yes.
Second.
Parliamentarian, is that a different enough motion?
I think so.
We have a motion on the floor to re-rank the top 11 priorities that are on the board. And we have a second, which is Brent Straight. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No.
No.
Okay, please raise your hand if you are in favor. Board Member Hymas, Board Member Straight, Board Member Hart, Board Member Norton, and Board Member Lear. Those opposed? Board Member Booth, Board Member Moss, Board Member Klein, Board Member Hutchings, Board Member Earl, Board Member Hanson, Board Member Cannon, and Board Member Belknap. That motion fails. Could the yeses raise your hand one more time because we missed a couple? Hart, Norton, and Lear were in addition to those two. Okay. Are we ready to move on? Wow, amazing. Okay, let's move on. We are going to item 8, R277419, pupil accounting, Deputy Superintendent Stallings.
You know when you need the code.
Okay. All right, good afternoon. Thank you. Board members, Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. I apologize, I'm not sure how to make this not look like that. It's showing on my, do it this way. I will just quickly go through these slides and hope that I can move them. So just as a reminder, R277419 is our main rule regarding our 180 days and 990 hours. Yeah, if you could figure that out. And we've made some big changes over the last couple of years to this rule. And the last version of the rule you adopted in March of this year, so earlier this year, but you may remember that it was adopted for the 21-22 school year only. And so now we are at a time where many of our LEAs are establishing their calendars for the next year and have asked that the board send or give the decision of whether or not we're going to maintain what we've done for the 21-22 year, for the 22-23 year, or something else. So I'll just go ahead and use, yeah. Oh, it's frozen. I think that my computer got mad at me. It's, oh, see, it's right there.
All right.
Let me just do this and maybe that'll fix it. Here it is. Yep, I think we got it. Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. So just as a reminder, again, the 419 has traditionally had the 990 and the 180. And in 2021, we made some large changes to some of the language from instructional hours to educational services. We eliminated the daily hour minimum of 2 hours in kindergarten, 4 hours in grades 1 through 12. We eliminated some prescriptive language about passing in halls and recess and lunch. You may all remember that. And we also changed terminology of continuing enrollment measurement to learner validated enrollment measurements. In that version as well, there was a waiver of the 990 hours. And then last year, which was actually just earlier this year, so in March of 2021, the board approved a version of the rule that eliminated the 990-hour requirement. It was not a waiver, but it simply eliminated the 990-hour requirement and required LEAs to provide educational services over a minimum of 180 school days each school year, and that was for 1 year only. So you can see the current language. This is the key core language in the rule that now says an LEA is required to provide educational services over a minimum of 180 school days. So as we were preparing for you to make this decision, we discussed what our recommendation would be and whether we should get into a very in-depth discussion at this point and make some large changes or not to R277419. And the staff felt pretty confident that in the recommendation that the board extend this current version of the rule for an additional year and then bring back in the fall of 2022, have a more in-depth discussion with which we hope will have some more data from 2 years of assessment data that then can inform your decision on what a permanent or ongoing version of the rule should be. You'll see in the background, I won't pull it up unless you'd like me to, but draft 1 of 419 includes these things. It extends the version that we currently have in place for this school year to the 22-23 school year. It makes some other technical changes. There were 2 definitions that needed to be removed because of name changes to a program and another program being repealed. It also includes some recommendations from the audit committee, and I can speak a little bit more to that. It was going to be a separate agenda item, but we went ahead and included it in draft 1 of 419 along with the staff recommendation to extend the year. What the audit committee did, and if I misspeak, either Vice Chair Belknap or Debbie Davis will correct me, but it eliminates the agreed upon procedures engagement requirement beginning with this fiscal year and ongoing. So it would remove that, what is sometimes called the AUP, or agreed upon procedures engagement, from the rule as well. And that was a recommendation from the audit committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Board Member Hanson.
So if I can direct a question to staff.
Please.
I'd appreciate it. So we changed this and got away from the 990 hours because kids had gone to remote learning. It was difficult to track hours in seats, and now we're all back in in-person learning. That's been mandated through the state. Why the need for the extension? Why is staff confident in requesting that?
Sure.
Please.
Would you like me to answer that? And at this point, I'm going to be channeling Darren Nielsen, Jennifer Thronson, Superintendent Dixon. This is really not necessarily Angie's expertise, but from what I understand, many of our LEAs, although we are back to in-person learning, we're not necessarily back to in-person learning the way we were prior to the pandemic. Many districts and charter schools, some are doing hybrid learning where some students might be working from home 1 or more days a week, and then they have in-person learning 4 days a week or less or more. So I think that we've had a lot of LEAs reach out to us and say that they've been able to use the flexibility of eliminating the 990 hours to do more personalized competency-based learning. I can name some districts and charter schools that might just have some of their student body come in on a certain day. Other members of the student body work from home. When you have that 990 hours, and I would argue that Actually, LEAs could already do all of that, even with the 990 hours in place, because of our language where we not only have an attendance validated system, but we have a learner validated enrollment measurement. When you're looking at learners, they don't necessarily have to be there in the classroom for 980 hours or in front of a laptop for 990 hours. But I think that that 990 hours created a mind set where people were counting, literally counting hours. I remember one time I had a superintendent of an unnamed district say, well, in our elementary schools, we're going to have 1,020 hours, but in our secondary schools, we're going to have 960. So do I need to get a waiver from the board for those 30 hours? And I was like, well, before, maybe. Or you need to, are you using learner validated enrollment measurements instead of attendance? It gets into a very complex conversation. So that was probably a too long of an answer to your question, but hopefully it helped.
Just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
So other than anecdotal evidence, do we have any, we don't have anything to show what the effect of the non-990 requirement has been, is that right?
Well, actually, I asked Darren Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, that very question. Based on our spring 2021 assessment results, I asked him that very question, and what he said is, we don't have evidence that it has impacted student learning negatively. So at the very least, he felt comfortable, and I don't believe he's here today, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking for him. I would let him speak to it, but he did state that he feels confident that we haven't seen a negative impact on student learning from the waiver. But that is why staff recommended having a second year of assessment data to bring all of that information back to you in the fall of 2022, where hopefully we will have more answers to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hart.
We still have the 180 days. So the 990, as someone that did have to count the minutes, means that I no longer have to count the minutes. And if it makes more sense for lunch to be 32 minutes because of passing periods or whatever, I no longer have to make it 29 minutes or 34 minutes just to meet the 990. So the 180, 990, I feel the way to answer that might be you're measuring it in two different ways, and you don't need to, because you still have 180 days that you're just not getting down to, well, do you count passing periods in the hallway? Do you count morning announcements? Do you count? And it was majoring in minors. So that's just my take on that.
Thank you. Board Member Cannon.
Yeah, so it seems just a little counterintuitive to me. We're going through a period of time when the federal government is pouring millions of dollars into our schools. We are trying to fund extra days for professional development, for all of these things, and yet we're saying we're not going to worry about educational service time for our students. So I get Molly's point about the counting hours, but to me, it just feels counter to what we're trying to do. I mean, our taxpayers pay us to educate our children. They expect from us that we provide the best education we can, and I think we try very, very hard to do that. And so I don't see the benefit to eliminating the 180 days or 990 hours. Then can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
So I'm just thinking about your fund students through educational membership, correct? Do you fund them all at 180 days, or do you fund them like some districts have, like Granite has 190 days? How are those other days funded? And different districts have all different number of days.
That's correct. So Vice Chair
Please.
Davis. So my understanding, and Deputy Superintendent Jones can come and correct me if I'm wrong, that all of our funding formulas divide by 180 days. So, but when you have do have some districts that provide more, and that's fine. They often are supplementing or subsidizing their own either property tax or other funding to do that. And then we also have some districts and charter schools who have a 4-day week, and they might be more at like 150 or 165. But what I understand we do with our funding formulas is we prorate. But the base number for our formulas is 180. And my understanding is the 990 actually is not used as far as our distribution formulas. It is the 180.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Board Member Hutchings, I hope.
I'd like to make a motion
Okay, please.
that the board continues and approves R 277-419 draft 1 on the second and final reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Board Member Straight, we have a motion on the floor that the board continues and approves R 277-419 draft 1 on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I,
Okay, please raise your hand if you're a no. Board Member Booth and Board Member Cannon are no's. And Board Member Hanson is a no. Sorry, thank you. We,
This is for one more year. For 1 year,
for one more year, right?
one more year.
I didn't have any hands on discussion. Board Member Straight, did you have discussion on that last one? Because I didn't have any lights. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. We've had a suggestion to move 328 to the end. So